Hey everybody, it's Ari, and I'm here to read another Starlight over Detrot chapter, Act 2, Chapter 2. Oh, man, I'm so tired. So how about we get this chapter set up? Oh, oops. Edit. Alright, Act 2, Chapter 2. Hush now. Quiet now. The Griffins and the Pegasi have had a long, rocky, and bloody history. The reason for it is not complex. Griffins eat meat, and Pegasus are made of meat. It provides a biological backdrop to a cultural reason Pegasi value flying skills and athleticism so highly. Those who did not display strong flying skills tended up to end up on a griffin's plate. It has been further suggested that Pegasus' power to manipulate weather and generate electrical storms is in fact a combination of magical and evolutionary adaptation to a hostile equestrian airspace. Nothing quite puts off another predator like being tased in the beak while several thousand feet in the air. In something of a great paradox, the Pegasus owe a lot of their current identity and capacity to the stresses put upon them by the tormentors higher up in the food chain. The predatory practices did start to die down around the time that Pegasus got fed up and started organizing their own militaries. When the one who survived were the ones who started fighting back in force. Ultimately, though, it was the alliance of the three tribes of the pony kind that put a stop to the practice just about entirely. When the price of a meal might include being turned into a newt and bucked into the next week, on top of being electrocuted, other meals start to appear more affordable. Two remained cold warriors for a long time afterwards, however. It was only well after Celestia and Lua rose to power that a genuine treaty was worked out between Equestria's two most prominent fighting species, who could then walk amongst their prehistoric enemies without fear of being eaten or shock fried. Which is not to say that the two species never got into scrapes every now and then. I wanted to ask more questions, but I can see my driver starting to nod off as the burst of relieved energy gave way to a combination of drinks and what was probably several sleepless days and nights. It was a potent cocktail, and she was flagging fast. I helped her into the Digny, threw a sheet over her, and turned on the air conditioner before flopping down underneath, resting my head on an awful red throw pillow with the cherub fowl stitched into it. From that horrendously unfashionable vantage point, I let my mind wander. I thought about a day, many years ago, when I'd run through an open grassy field following my brother, who was shouting encouragement as I fought to keep up with my shorter legs. Wait, Hardy, you never had a brother. This wasn't what I needed if my brain was going to go for a walkabout. I shut my eyes tight as I could and forced my brain to quiet. There in the darkness behind my eyelids, I tried to write myself around my own memories. Juniper laughing over a bottle line, Mom baking in the kitchen or carving in her workshop. Dad in from the station house, washing the bit of mud off of his badge and digging it out of his horseshoes. Eating dinner with Taxi, who was showing her latest little magic trick, or talking in the corner to my father about some nuance of a case he was working on. My brother holding me while we slept after I had had a bad dream. Oh, damn it, that one's not mine. Nothing would quite silence the sensation in my head that I was no longer silence the distinction distinct sensation in my head that I was no longer alone in my own head. I should have been more appalled, frightened, disgusted. Instead, I felt as though some pony was trying to comfort me. I eased downward into a confused but somehow pleasant sleep. Dreams are still dreams, even if you're not sure whose they might be. Sorry, guys. Hi, I have a viewer. I love it when I have a viewer. Even if you're not paying attention to me, thank you for hanging out. Hardy, Hardy, wake up! Hubs shook my shoulders violently, and I swatted them in my semi-asleep state. This earned me a toe in the stomach that brought me fully awake all in one go. Sweets, what'd you do that for? Wake up! Oh, God, sorry, I don't know if I'm able to do voices at all today. My driver gave me another good shake to make sure I was fully conscious, and then stopped back to the bathroom. I heard water running and then the flush of a toilet before calling out. I went out this morning and fixed my radio, then I called Telly and told her we're back on the grid. She left a message to call Skies. Skies, what does he want? Taxi almost danced back in, wiping the edges of her muzzle with a towel draped over one leg. He knows where Swift is. What, Skies? Apparently. I hope this is a short chapter. I used the edges of the dinghy to haul myself up before dropping onto all fours and doing a full body stretch. My rest had been interrupted by a succession of strange and sometimes foul stream scrapes. But I felt excellent. The floor wasn't exactly comfortable, but I'd slept in much worse places, and I didn't felt like moving the empty food container off the couch. While she's usually very finicky, my driver has been known to turn into a bit of a slob when on the bad side of a downward spiral, much like myself, actually. Was that the news you required to shake my feelings loose? I asked, grabbing my hat and the diary from my makeshift nightstand. I stuffed my book down my front coat and then mashed the hat over my ears, wiggling them through. Taxi gave me a sober look. Jade knows you're back. How? Told Telly. I stopped short when I realized what I was about to say. Jade had eyes everywhere within the castle, if nothing else. She had an institution that would give taxis a run for its money. Forget I said anything. What does she want? I think Taxi parsed it down to something fit for quaint ears. The gist of it is that you need to come in right now, this very second, or you'll suffer until the stars fall out of the sky. Jade must be taking more of the green squares if she's feeling that kindly. I expected the death squad. I sent out immediately. Fuck. I'll see how I feel once we picked up the kid. Setting a hoof in the castle after what we pulled is begging for another trip to the hereafter. You can't avoid her forever. I'm fully aware. Now, get your stuff, call the front desk, and let them know you're checking out or leaving. What are you looking for? Oh, okay. All I saw was him leaning into the bathroom with the light on. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I couldn't see you behind him. So, why would he be leaning into the bathroom? Taxi kept peering at me in the rearview mirror as we drove along, as though to make certain I was really actually there. That I'd only experienced the subject day between strutting like a champion of the world in Picasso's office and waking up on a slab. Sorry, hold on. Was still terribly disorienting. Gingerly shifting the fur on my chest about, I finally found the zipper and pulled it down a few inches and tapped the socket. Was it? I breathed a sigh of relief when the light came on. I wasn't looking forward to my first charging station today. Charging session. So many questions, too many. Don Home, the librarian to the criminal underworld, was probably the best one to answer the questions about my new organ. But knowing him, he was about to exact a price I was uncomfortable paying. The meeting with Jane was bound to be painful or great fun, maybe both. I'd often fantasize about what I would do if she finally dropped the hammer and fired me. There was also the distinct possibility that someone might, at some point, try to kill me again. I'd been gunned down from a cloud last time, and if our opponents knew my exact location, nothing was stopping them from taking another shot. Taxi's sense of her city could be relied upon to keep us free from stalkers, but very little could prevent us from determined assassins from taking down a target if he knew where they were going to be, which left me with the unpredictably and the fact that they probably believed me still dead as my only actual strategic haven. Wait, I heard that wrong. That left me with the unpredictability and the fact that they probably believed me still dead was the only actual strategic haven. I needed a safe place to stay, but I couldn't worry about that until certain things were handled. All that remained, if I survived that insurmountable list of lethal problems, was the kid. Hey, can we pull over so I can bring disguise? I asked over the seat back. By way of answering, taxi tugged the night trotter over into a lane, pulling us to a stop beside a telephone box. There's a first I will list up on the corner. Bless the sky. Do you mind if I go get myself fixed up? Oh, go ahead. I'll probably be a few minutes. Telly left a number for Sky, but unless you want to risk Jay listening in, you'll probably better use the actual phone rather than routing through the station house. Alright, I'll see you in a few. I hope they do emergency jobs. Blue is not your killer. I sorted through my pockets until I found a few stray coins, and then stepped out on the street corner as the cab pulled off towards the nearby boutique. Give me a second, I'm gonna try to disguise. Aye, you stinking short shite. Call me early in the morning, you best not be asking for a handout. I got to give oi a gun and a belly full of drunk. What come? Aye, you stinking short of shit. Call me early in the morning, you best not be asking for handouts. I got a gun and a belly full of drunk. What will calm down and rain lead on the hellfire on ye. Guys, it's me. Me fucking who? Hardy, jeez. I'm out of the game 3 weeks, and everybody forgets the sound of my voice. Hardy, scandal me eggs. Oh boy, oh. Oi, I heard you as well. You pretty been has been telling tales of woe. She said you was dead or gunshot. The kind of ponies don't walk away from. I'm still amazed on how many things in the world can be both right and wrong simultaneously. Now, what's that supposed to mean, boyo? Nothing important. Where's the kid? Long science. Your wee girlie is kipping at a motel over the top of the Griffin boat beat, though we've called the plot hole. But Hardy, me so, I got to warn you. Okay, hold on. This guy's just fun even when I'm sick, but I am too sick to enjoy doing his voice. Plot hole. I have a thing for hotels. Okay. You know what? I'll hotel. Warn me of what? You kiddo ain't like she was, matey. Something broken inside. She sings and writes little ditty play to pay her tabs, but boy oh she fights. Never seen nothing like it. Your girlie ain't right no more. I tried to talk to her, keep her safe. And sometimes she's alright, and sometimes she don't even see me. Talks like I ain't talks like I ain't there to some pony a name of grape or something. You think somebody you think to get her to somebody who can help? Hardy, you ain't seen your little sweet thing scrap. Them is a bunch of them is a bunch what likes to tussle and a pint and a Lego fine meat. They ain't picky what kind of meat either. But girlie uses them packed in copper fighting styles and holds her own against the griffins, but should be using her leg bones for toothpicks. She's fast and better than a badger fly. Is that the only reason? Well, Girlie knows what she needs if she were a griffin. It'd still be a stiff cup and a scruff o' the knuckles. When I found her, she was digging in dumpsters covered in blood. Smelled like a weak old kill. Ain't so much better now. Right, I'll go pick her up and see what I'm dealing with. Thanks for the tip. Hardy? Yeah? You be careful down there. Them is not the sorts impressed by a shield and a gun. I'll keep that in mind. Take care, guys. You too, laddie. Ooh. Oh, God. Sorry. As much as I wanted to get going immediately, Taxi's tie job would not be rushed. The stylist just shook his head as I passed him money for the job, pushing it back as he said something about it being a fine pleasure to fix such a disaster. I pocketed the bits just as my driver trotted out of a booth, Her fur still damp and a pleased smile on her face. Her mane was unbraided, but it looked distinctly more like hers. The black and white layers were back to their normal shades, and it must have required magic to get the dye out so quickly. Oh, that's better, I said, holding open the shop store. You're telling me, you mind if I ask? Sh- though, shouldn't we be keeping our heads down if nothing else? The dye was a decent disguise. Taxi wanted to know as she stepped out into the greasy morning air in front of me. Honestly, I shrugged, stepping up to the cab and parked out front and opening the back door to climb in. Someone tipped off our assassins. We were at Cosmos. Barry, mostly. Most likely. The little weasel smiled at me as we were on the way up the elevator. He'll probably be in Zebraland drinking mojitos and chasing striped fling by now. I think we've got a grace period before he or someone he works for finds out I'm up and around. I may have been a target of opportunity and not a target at all. Or not a target at all. They did burn down your home. Yes, they did, I replied, feeling a twinge of sadness. I really liked that apartment. I'm assuming they were looking for Ruby's diary. If they want that, they need me alive. If they don't, well, I can't live the rest of my life in a log cabin somewhere. I need to know. I need to find out who is working all these angles. And once we've got the kid, I think I know a place where we can bunk while we work this out. Shouldn't we? Oh, I don't know. Taxi hauled herself behind the night charter's wheel and started the engine and letting it out. Hardy, I have no idea how to handle something this big. I mean, whoever this is, they just killed the head of one of the most dangerous crime families in the whole of Detrot, which means the whole of Equestria, just the type Blue's in. This is the sort of thing that the police call Canterlot to take care of. We should at least tell the police department. Yeah, and the department is going to do precisely what, may I ask? I heaped my coat beside my head, resting my chin on it. You know the job. You think Jade will authorize an investigation? My cutie mark has been all flutter since I woke up in the freezer. I'm gonna do what I do. Investigate. That's what I was afraid of. She prodded the pedals, turning us onto the thoroughfare, and then added, oh well, if you can't be talked out of it, then I guess you've got wheels. The more ponies you have watching your back, the less likely someone or something is going to put another bullet through it. Besides, I was getting tired of this decor at the high seas. Glad to hear, because if I'm honest, I don't want to do this without you. That got a smile out of her. Now, let's go find Swift and see what she's been getting into. Crossing the city during the morning rush is misery no matter what city you happen to be in. Detrot's complex webs of byways, highways, and undersheets doesn't make it any simpler. Even with a knowledgeable cabbie who is more than happy to cause near-death experiences to save a few minutes, the trip was longer than it should have been, and I was getting antsy by the time the traffic started clearing. Oh, shit. I gotta go fix that. Oh, shit. Just realized I forgot to do that on the last one. Update. Right. Peering out the window, I realized we were heading towards the direction of Detrot International Air Airport. As we drove, I started seeing shadows passing between us and the sun, far higher than all, but the still most ambitious skyscraper might climb, Skytown. Skytown had kind of the aggregated, perhaps literally out of the blue, when enough Pegasus and Griffin residents had decided that they were tired of sleeping on the ground. It had been done so without the benefits of any kind of central planning or taste, so that instead of the traditional Pegasus Cloud City style with massive columns and high roofed temples, the whole was a confusing mishmash of conflicting novelty architectures. I saw one cloud the shape of a like a fairy tale castle adjacent to another the shape of a rubber duck, intentionally lit from below by a spotlight to make the place glow yellow inside. The whole thing reminded me of when I was a fowl laying on my back in the grass, gazing up at the clouds, interpreting their shapes, except when they found a cloud that was shaped like a dog with 5 legs and a gland problem. Some pony had not only tried to live there, but parked that cloud next to every other bizarrely shaped cloud they could find. On the ground below Skytown, a loose, slightly seedy confederacy of fueling stations, greasy spoons, and cheap hotels designed to cater to budget minded travelers and provide clashing clouds above with a modest income, as well as a place for the winged to interact with the land-bound friends and family. I didn't visit much. The investigations in Skytown were left to the police department's flight capable officers, and I didn't envy the poor bastards one bit for that. A Pegasus preferred the method of body deposal. Pegasus' preferred method of body disposal tended to involve said corpse being shoved onto the cloud and pushed out over the wilderness, which means things get either eaten by wilderness beasts or simply drift endlessly. Depending on the weather and the stability of the cloud, however, this has been known to backfire, most famously during Mayor Sniffers and our girl clean up the city speech, which was interrupted by a cadaver crashing through his podium. I'm pretty sure I have Mayor Sniffer. Yes. Okay. I'm trying to feel a little better, but that's not saying much. Between the buildings, I could now and then see snags and glimpses of the port itself, and it almost made up for the aesthetic atrocity committed by the Skytown. Emerald Towers is suspended by clouds sprouted from huge golden spires sitting in vast green fields, miles from anything else. Hordes of winged creatures spun in orderly circles about it, some trailing the fat cigar like air chariots, while others had only themselves and perhaps a cart for their possessions, all waiting to go through customs. My heart beat a little harder as that old fowl like wonder crept up from wherever it was hiding. When I'm being cynical and pissy, I never wanted to fly myself, nor was I a fan of heights. But there was something truly glorious about that holding pattern of comers and goers. The beautiful choreographed dance of aerial beings, all passing through the mighty tower on their way to parts unknown. The ground traffic had thinned until we were very nearly the only ponies on the road, aside from a few pedestrians and other cabs on their way to the air chariot port to deliver and pick up travelers. Only a few ponies remained on hoof. While that part of the city couldn't exactly be called safe, nor was it rife with crime. The farther we drove, the darker it became, as clouds were crowded out the already spare sun until spare sun, I had it right, until it's a reasonable possibility of twilight in the deep alleys. We were passing a roaming group of griffin tribals decked out in full war regalia, who who stared at the car with undisguised suspicion until we turned around another corner. Neither of us were especially familiar with the grimy ground district beneath Skytown, so we ended up doubling back a couple of times in the narrow streets before finally resorting to stand on the curb and waving down a passing Pegasus air patrol pony. He directed us toward the particular crowd sector hanging somewhere down a series of back roads. Oh, that had been my imagination, but the closer I saw that it did indeed bear a striking to resemblance to a wedge of cheese turned on its end. The complete lack of municipal building regulations governing the shape that clouds in the sky could be in Skytown meant there were more than a few of these hideous eyesores. Space was cheap, though, so many budding amateur architects started there, designing cloud homes and hotels. We wound our way closer, navigating largely by taxi's internal compass, and even with directions, we damn near missed it. The plot hole is one of those fine places frequented by youthful idiots drinking their way to middle age and old killers hanging around at the cast stubbornness. I'd been into 100 to like it, or so I thought. The beer was going to be watery, but if you asked for water, the whole building would laugh. The place it's sorry. The place itself spilled like a nasty infection through the bottom floors might have been a cheese shop in better days. If it were a roach motel, the roaches would be demanding tea towels and better combinations. Someone with shallow pockets had done the facade, which was a set of boarded up windows covered in griffin tribal symbols spray painted over the plywood, leaving the cheese cloud up above as only the identifying mark. It was the kind of place you either knew was there or somebody told you was there. They didn't advertise because there was no door guard and no tuxedos. If you went into the plot hole, you understood that you were there on your own accord. Anything that happened to you was your own damn fault. Not responsible for lost or stolen limbs. Sorry. Outside on the corner, Crowded laughing, boozing Pegasus, Air Navy wrestled hooves and claws with a bunch of young griffins over an upturned tablespoon. Sorry, guys. Here's my taxi swerved to avoid a postured old fella. He'd probably had one too many salt legs, skidded into the curb beside the parking meter. The night trotter's brakes whistled unhappily at being so treated, steaming the mid-morning air as we got out. My driver started to feed the rusting parking meter that looked like it hadn't had maintenance since cars had been invented. I gave her a curious look. You think somebody is going to come out here to boot the car? I'm just being cautious. Besides, while you were gone, I made a little bit of extra money and put in an alarm system. What kind of alarm? Patting the hood, she pulled the tiny black box from her saddlebag and touched a button on it. Something inside the car shuddered, and a soft glow suffused the interior upholstery before fading a moment later. Let's just say you wouldn't want to touch the seats right now, unless, of course, you like the idea of spending several weeks screaming in the burns unit of the Holy Sun Memorial. I don't know if I have this. Whatever happened to Peace and Light? Yeah, Peace and Light didn't apply to any pony that touches my car without asking. We circled the building twice, looking for an entrance. All the doors we tried were or boarded over or chained shut. We could see a couple of ponies and griffins going from the rooftop, but none of them hurt us. Or, but none of them hurt us. Were sober enough to listen or cared to stop when we shouted for assistance. Finally, one of the Navy Pegasi, his cap flipped backwards on his head, stumbled away from his friends, and gave Taxi a wink. Beer stains covered his uniform lapels, and every other step was in the wrong direction. Hey, pretty. You feel like ditching the square and coming with me for the night? He drawled, holding his beer protectively to his chest. Before I could step between them and prevent a murder, my driver returned his smile with a demure tilt of her chin and a swish of her tail. I would love to, but I don't have a drink of my own. You happen to know how I can get into this place? The sailor glanced at me, raising his bottle in my direction. What about your cult friend? Oh, he's not my cult friend. He's got a little lover boy named Scarlet waiting for him anyways. Okay, hold on. Hardy. Guys. taxi. Get spaces. This hurts my eyes. I half opened my mouth to protest, but let it snap shut and settled for an irritable snort. Ignoring me, she stepped closer to the soft pony, brushed her cheek against what must have been an absolutely foul shoulder. So how about it? Mind showing us the way? The obvious surprise to find his tactic had netted him any interest whatsoever. The stallion gave me an appraising, cockeyed look before turning back to taxi. Sure, a sweet thing. There's a rope for ponies without wings over there. He tipped the mouth of his bottle towards the corner of the plot hole. Let me fly you up. Oh, that's so sweet. She gave him a little kiss on his scruffy cheek, and even in his drunken state, he peakened. I'm afraid of flying, though, so I'll just climb. Why don't I meet you inside? You can get another couple of drinks, and I'll be right there. Oh, that's a good idea. The blushing sailor flailed his wings and stumbled sideways. He flopped them weakly, lifting about a meter off the ground before flying face first into an electrical pole directly behind him and sliding into the gutter. He let out a snort, kicked one rear leg, and then started to snore. Taxi let out a slow breath, then tore a kerchief out of her bag and began wiping everywhere she'd touched the drunk. I guess there was no prettier way of doing that, was there? I murmured, kicking the stallion's bottle off the curb. Unless you wanted to snuggle up to him and pout your lips a little. No, I'm not criticizing. I replied, trotting off the corner of the building the sailor pointed at. We'd passed the rope twice, and I'd paid it no mind. It was knotted at intervals for easy climbing and to wrap around a cleat, driven into the black rock. The thick rope went through a hole 6 meters in the air into one of the lower takeoff platforms. I guess they couldn't settle for stairs, could they? Come on, you used to be able to do this. Remember when we were kids? Taxi grinned and leapt onto the wall, grabbing the twine in her teeth, hauling her rear legs up to the first knot, and clambering up like a spider monkey. My heart should have been hammering at the thought of climbing a building, but it was, again, strangely peaceful. Taxi peered over the side and shouted, Hey, you gonna be down there all day? I am working up to it, damn it. Grabbing a hold of my anger to bolster my courage, I sketched up and grabbed the rope in my teeth. Using a garbage can for a stepladder, I dragged myself up to the first knot. I grabbed the ledge, using my rear hooves to brace against the side of the hole. Levering myself up, I caught Taxi's hoof and pulled myself onto the platform. Getting up, I brushed myself off, licking a bit of brick dust off my coat. Taxi was giving me one of those looks. What I do now? You just climbed a 3-story high rope, she replied, tilting one of her ears towards the ground very far below. I hastily backed away from the edge, putting one hoof on my stomach. And you're not even breathing hard? She pointed out, touching my chest. I looked at myself, turned to circle. She was right, 3 stories up, and I wasn't even winded. I should have felt some burn in my muscle, but they felt just as they had when I'd woken up that morning. Huh. Coffee and a heart transplant will do that to you, I guess. You're not kidding. How are your batteries? Could we find them something else to call them beside my batteries? Fine. How are the magic rocks in your chest? The taxi gave me a full panic week. I gritted my teeth and zipped the plug pouch, and the light was winking on and off. I've got some left, a few hours at least, before I have to try out that plug Stitch's assistant gave me. Don't take too many chances with that, please. The arch the archivist said your 3 days from a heart attack when you're fully charged, and physical exertion or injuries will drain it more quickly. Good to know. Don't worry. As soon as we get out of here, I'll find myself a wall socket. Turning to the darkened doors at the end of the platform, I straightened my hat and walked into the plot hole ready for anything. Why do I ever think I'm ready for anything? Bang up, swing down, make a robin from a dusty son of a gun. In spite of the sun on the horizon, inside the plot hole was dim, and what little light did creep through was a swallow yellow sneaking through the cracks in the boards covering the windows. A low, thick haze of Cherokee smoke obscured the details of the bar's interior. I let my lungs adjust to the trickle of vaporized tar providing the dreary atmosphere. Drinks down, fly away, farther than sun can find you. A double bass strum a steady beat to the words of an unseen but very sweet voice on stage somewhere across the half-empty barroom. Through the smoke and the moving bodies, I couldn't make out much. Though my eyes grew accustomed and I started to find details here and there. What I thought was just one floor turned out to be three, the ceiling having been torn out of the bottom two floors to make additional seating accessible to those who could accessible only to those who could fly. Most of the patrons seemed to be girlfriends of different colors and shapes. Some were tribals, though, and most were city-dwelling variety, who were both less muscular and smaller, and more refined air about them. I hopped sideways to avoid a beast that might against Guys, who was undoubtedly the largest griffin I'd ever met. Imagine a claw rustle. The hybrid tripped its cat and raised a beer to his beak, stomping massively. There was another scent underlining the sweet, burning brains and the smoke that gave me pause. It took several seconds to identify, and when I did, I wheezed and tried not to breathe. God, cooking meat. The whole place reeked of meat on a grill. Sorry, guys, I'm trying. Taxi stumbled against my side as a tall stallion pushed past us onto the platform we just climbed up and leapt off. Spreading his wings and sailing into the morning air, I pulled her towards what I presumed to be the bar. It had the greatest concentration of empty space, it being early morning and only a few dedicated alcoholics sipping brews. Most of the crowd was sitting around the stage. Hide away, so cry softly in the hollow tree, begging for heaven to take you. I climbed onto the stool with my driver beside me and called out to the thick-necked girlfriend behind the bar. Hey, bartender, a little service? I'm a barista, dickwit. This is a coffee shop, he said without turning, seeming very intent on cleaning a set of mugs. Well, barista, little service, or do I have to ask your mother to stop hiking her tail down in the alley to get up here and make me a cup of coffee? I shot back, putting both hooves in the bar. The barista slapped a towel over one. Um, okay. The barista slapped a towel over one shoulder and then swung his face to me. He had only one eye, the other was covered by a black patch. His jawline was a mass of old battled scars. Stalking forward, he set his terribly sharp talons in front of me and glared down at me from his huge height. What did you say, little stallion? His voice held all manner of promise of death and pain, should my answer be the wrong one. I said, your mother's having a good dicking alley, and she'd probably make a better day starter, so either go get her or give me some brew. Chop, chop, I replied, letting a slow, impudent smile spread across my face. It should be noted that griffins have a very few rules of social discourse. As far as I've been able to discover, they believe the world is governed best by two things: a strong hierarchy and huge testicles. If you have one, you don't need the other, and you can get damn near anything in a griffin society by either having courage or a position. The barista turned one eagle eye close and then burst into a hearty laugh. You stallion are gonna die horribly one day. You got a griffin friend? I pulled open the flap on my chest, showing the socket with the heart shape like it's already happened. And yeah, he is a tall drink of piss. Name of skies. I woke up from 3-day coma this morning, and I could really use a pick me up. Shifting his weight, the griffin snatched a cup from under the bar and jammed it into an espresso machine, flipping the switch and setting off a series of clicks and buzzes. I had no skies. Bucket of piss, more like. You cop too? Sometimes. I pulled my badge over my head, setting it on the bar, pushing it a few inches to one side. Sometimes I just want a cup of coffee and a bit of quiet. Coming up. Before he could move away, I reached out and lightly conked for like, hey, one more thing. A 20-bit piece appeared from my coat pocket, and I tossed it to him. You seen a bright orange Pegasus about half my height and maybe a bit odd. Oh, you mean little fireball? A little fireball. The barista shifted his weight, crossing his talons over the bit and making it vanish into the fold of his tatty apron. He jerked his beak to the stage, and I twisted on the stool towards it. The added height allowed me to just barely see over the crowd to the tall avians. Whisper to me, pray to see, hanging from the mistletoe tree, blossoms to the devil's seats. That gorgeous, sad voice kept time, hitting each verse with the metronomic perfection. It was poetry sung unspoken. If I hadn't been so intent on my task, I might have stopped to have a weep. Sentimental it was, but it reminded me of better times. I peered around, trying to find taxi in the foggy, darkly lit room. For a moment, I thought she'd vanished, until I caught sight of her up on the second balcony. How she'd gotten up there without wings was anybody's guess. She waved to me and then pointed her toe to the stage. My attention turned back as I tried to pick out what was going on in the front of the dark curtain hanging in the corner. There was a bassus with a griffin with its implement leaning against his chest, and the microphone stand with the mic tilted all the way down. There was a head between us, but as it moved, I knew who was standing before I saw the sobbing colored plumage spread out to either side of her, Swift. Officer Swift calls the second unluckiest sad sack of cop flesh the world ever did see. Her first day on the job, she puked in a garbage can on the crime scene. The second day, a mad musical musician offered her an eyeball and a steak. The third day, she watched her partner die of a sucking chest wound to the chest of a mobster in the office of a mobster. Way to we're gonna add in time. Let yourself be safe, and hope will come back when home is the grave. I'd never heard her voice like that. She's something, isn't she? The bartender had returned, dropped the coffee on the counter beside me. I absently minded fiddled the straw around to my lips and slurped. It was damn fine, bitter and brisk. Little fire came in about 2 weeks ago with different skies. Crazy, covered in what I was pretty sure weren't animal blood. Big Eddie. He flicked a claw at some other corner of the room. At first, I took the form he was gesturing for a novelty mummy of a griffin propped against a table. On second inspection, I saw it was moving. Has a thing for pony flank. Made a play. Tried to take a nip. She broke his collarbone. How'd he get like that? She broke his collarbone. My server's beak clacked as he sank her tones off. The 3-story fall, while he figured out you can't fly with a broken collarbone, did the rest. Using his bar towel, he wiped at an old stain in the corner. Her sets off in a minute if you want to talk to her. She stays upstairs in the cloud, comes down here every day to just sings that Prussian shit. Pretty, but makes you want to toss yourself out a window. Crowds love it though. Freakiest little horse I ever did meet. As I watched, Swift's song or poem or whatever it was came to an end. She lowered her head. I expected an applause. It had been a lovely piece to my untrained ear. The only sound the congregants made was to snap their claws and tap their hooves. Keeping their bass's beat, she stepped backwards, vanishing behind a black curtain as an older pony wearing a beret hopped up to the mic. That there was Little Fireballs, lady and gentlebeans, he announced with a sweeping bow towards the backstage. Thank you all for coming to the open brunch. Tips from Miss Fireball go in the jar by the stage, and we'll make sure she gets some. Anyone not tipping, please die in a fire. The flock of griffins dispersed, some dropping a few slips of gold into the jar before moving off with their coffees and glasses. A few to higher floors, most of the coffee bar. She'll be over here in a minute. Just do watch. Waters always orders the same thing. The Bristol rumbles. True to his word, Swift reappeared once the crowd had moved off and picked up the tip jar, balancing it between her wings as she walked. Her eyes on the floor towards the bar. None of the audience accosted her. Though some offered words of approval, she didn't acknowledge them. Big Eddie's eyes glittered, watching her with malevolent and altogether ineffectual fury as he sipped his steaming cup. She stopped in front of my stool, still staring at the floor. What do you say to somebody who watched you die? How many things can you say? Nothing seemed to be appropriate to the Pegasus. Nothing seemed appropriate, and the Pegasus was the shadow of herself. She still wore the boutical tactical suit, but it was torn and stained in places, like she had nasty Detrot of some sort, her wings normally preened within an inch of their lives, had feathers sticking out in every direction. Even as I watched, one came loose and dropped to ashen floor. Kid, could you please move? You're in my seat, she murmured in a soft enough voice that I had to lean forward. Swift. Reluctantly, she lifted her chin from the dejective zag, and her eyes met mine. They whitened slightly, and then she shook her head violently from side to side, almost spilling her tip bar. And after a short pause, they dropped again. Could you please move? You're in my seat. I slid onto the stool beside that one and waited for my rookie to climb up. It was high enough that, by all rights, she should have used her wings to help, but they were in such poor condition I doubt she could have commanded more than basic flight. She sat up, hunched over the bar, as the breastess set a small salad, topped with the diced chicken in front of her in a cup that smelled strongly of brandy. Pushing the tip jar across, she waited while he counted out the coins for her meal, then slid it back. I noticed that he didn't take a tip for himself. Swift. It's me. Swift, it's me. I tried again, putting a hoof on the edge of her plate before she could take a bite. I'm sorry, sir. I don't know who you are. I just want to eat my lunch. Please leave me alone, she muttered, tucking into a piece of lettuce. What did I think I was going to find? 3 weeks, and she'd been thinking it was dead. Probably much the same when Taxi pulled me out of the bar when Jupiter died. Grabbing her shoulders, I turned her face to me. Swift, it's Hardy. Look at me. Hey, buddy, don't! The barista started, but I tore my sleeve back from off my gun and glared him down until he backed away, returning my attention to my partner. Putting my hoof tip under her chin, I forced her head up and peered into her wasted young face. Skies hadn't exaggerated. Oh, I'm sorry. Swift was talking. Some defining piece, some necessary part, some essential essence was gone. She might have been 10 years old, or 50. The grime clinging to her matted fur made it hard to tell. Her face was lined with old tears. The scent coming off of her was unwashed Pegasus, strong enough to stun a charging bull at 50 paces. Musk, coffee, spice, and mildew. She didn't pull away, nor did her expression show anything but blind neutrality. I'm sorry, sir. I talked to Shoddy today, too. It's okay. I'm fine here. Shoddy, your friend Grapeshot, he's talking to you. Where is he? Yes, sir. He comes and goes. You're not gonna be talking to me all the time, too, are you? I dream about you sometimes. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing. Damn it, kid. I'm here. I'm really here. I barked, giving her a good shake. That's impossible, sir. The bullet was a 7.62 by 51 at 300 meters. It hit you in the chest. You died. You were dead. I saw. I'm so sorry. Her filthy ears splayed out against her head, the sores around them. The fur looked quite unhealthy. Taxi paid off a friend of mine and got me a heart transplant in time. She used magic heart from Cosmo's brother, been in a coma for the last few weeks. It was technically true, although I think omitted the various details, wherein I had actually been very dead, was probably simpler than the whole story. That could wait for another time, hopefully after I'd had a chance to speak with the Dawn. I still needed some explanation about how a changeling sticker had ended up in my chest. Swift, it's me, I swear. Pulling her off her suite, for putting in such sad condition, she sure moved quick. I barely ducked her first strike, and the second one caught me a glancing blow in a on my weak shoulder. I stumbled back against the bar, sweeping the salad off the counter in her face. Despite the distraction, she was on me instantly like a crazed animal, her wings buffeting my side. The stupid opponent fighting a Pegasus tend to try to get range and regroup after this sort of attack. It's a tactic I've seen plenty Griffins use. Griffins are ambush predators, and if the prey doesn't immediately fall, they're not built to fight a protracted battle, Partic- particularly if outmatched by a speedy opponent. The key is to getting close before the Pegasus could counter attack and pick you apart one piece at a time. Earth ponies can do close. Grabbing her by the neck and my forelegs, I rolled fast onto my side across the cigarette butt strewn floor. She tried to get her knees up to kick me between the legs, but I had the height and strength on my side, and I forced her head to one side, crossed my footlegs, and cut off flow the flow of to her brain with my knees. She snapped at my throat, but almost immediately her struggles became weaker, and she just started to pound on my ribs with her free wings. It hurt, bit less than one of those shots to the groin would have. I glanced at the floor beside my head, and the surprise loosened my grip, lasts long enough to get herself some purchase to shove away. Distracted for just an instant, I saw a taxi's yellow hooves dance by my cheek, and I noticed for the first time that there seemed to be a melee going on every side of us. The barista was locked in some fancy have to call combat with my driver, who was keeping him off of us, while the rest of the bar fought a pitched battle for some reason. I had missed the start, though I could only imagine we were the catalyst. That or it was just bar fight o'clock. It's a bar fight. I jerked sideways as a half-empty beer can crashed beside my face. Splashing across my chest, bottles, plates, or flying claws seemed to be the weapons of choice. Although there were a few wielding stools and cans. It was a joint for Griffin poetry affiandos, and being a group not naturally keen on criticism, I'm sure nothing was quite relieved the creative differences like bottling someone who gave you the gruff for splitting your infinitives. Unfortunately, it wasn't convenient to the task at hoof. Using my seat, I levered myself into a standing position as Swift dragged herself upright. She was moving slowly, and her powerful wings dragged on the dirt floor. Kid, snap out of it, I shouted, trying to be heard over the fighting. Yeah, no such like. She lifted her wings and prepared to launch herself at me when a movie monster rose out of the battlefield behind her. Before I could get my trigger on my lips, Big Eddie, his mane blowing in like the breeze that snuck in from somewhere, and his bandages trailing across the floor behind him, cracked my partner across the side of the head with his mug. She immediately slid to the floor, dazed, drooping against the bar. Yeah, the giant beast was the same size as Sky's, with the patchwork gauze crisscrossed across his face. Half in the half-light coffee shop, he was a scary golem looming over my unconscious partner. Taxi was still engaged, using one leg to pound on the barista, while another pinned a dangerously looking stallion with a shaved mane to the ground. Any hopes of her assistance was out the window. I leveled my gun at Big Eddie's forehead, ready to send him to the Great Hunt. I would have complicated my day to shoot a civilian. But after the month I had, it was definitely looking like an option if he laid another Italian on Swift. He watched my weapon, twisting his head on his neck, and that altogether bizarre way only birds are capable of. I saved a fucking life, and you want to pip me? He asked in a familiar tribal cockney. Thanks, but my life is handled. I replied out of the corner of my mouth, clicking the take your crazy girlie out here, and don't you come back, you hear? He gestured to Swift with his fluffy tail tip. Don't need no wacky in the head, broad, making my life harder. I got my lick in. Now sod off. He nodded in the direction of the door and then leapt into the air, grabbing one of the columns to the second floor and climbing claw over claw up to the balcony. Swinging himself over, he snatched a cup of coffee on the unoccupied table and propped himself on his claws, watching the fight unfold. A few times in my life, one presented situations like, oh, better than expected. I decided to count my lucky stars and retreat while they were still shining. Most of the combatants were just warmed up and didn't seem much interested in towing with a firearmed opponent, so I shoved Swift's body off the floor and onto my back and centered her limp weight across my spine. She'd lost more than a few pounds and couldn't afford to lose many more if the ease which I mere handled her were any indication. Taxi, I got her, we're going. I shouted, and hoping my driver could hear me. I'd lost track of her, but some seconds later, the canary-colored form appeared with a big, self-satisfied grin. Oh, this is my kind of place? What isn't your sort of place? Get my badge off the bar, and then help me get her down the rope. I pushed the door open to the platform and stepped out, hopping out of the way of the barreling griffin rushing out of the hole full tilt. Okay, I need a second. Oh, um, alright. I need to make a good idea who's who. Then I might need a break. Eddie. Who's a griffin? We get to who's who at midnight tonight. While the fight raged, Taxi climbed to the ground and I hauled up the rope, securing it around Swift's waist before lowering her onto my driver's waiting hooves. I let myself down slow, dropping into the alley beside them and hoisting my partner back onto my shoulders. Our drunken tailor friend was still laying in the gutter. His cap was missing, his pockets looked to be turned inside out. Still, it could have been worse. He was alive, and in the nastier corners of the city, that's as much as can be asked for. After Taxi stopped to lightly pat his head, the two of us moved on. The car was right where it had been, and Taxi disabled the car alarm. I tossed Swift into the back seat, folding her limp wings against her as neatly as I could. The smell of her quickly filled the tightly enclosed space. I know I should have asked this before we started a battle in the coffee bar full of Griffin War poets hopped up on heavy doses of caffeine. But what are we going to do now that we've got her? Taxi asked, starting a vehicle and turning us into the flow of mid-morning travelers. I glanced over at the filly, her face scrunched up in discomfort, her forelegs wheedled a little as though she was chased by some horrible dream. Sleep seemed troubled, but considering how long she'd probably been awake, I decided to let her rest. That and the physical alteration in the car didn't sound like a fun way to spend the ride. For now, the Vivi. Once we get there, we'll either have some honey to hit her with a sleep spell, or maybe that zebra neck trick while we handle our other errand. I directed as she pulled down the side street, turning us in the direction of the Babe Unity. Why? Where are you planning on going? The castle. I might not like it, but Jade needs to be handled before she does something rash, like put out an APB on me. After that, we'll see if we can regroup, so call in some bearers. I want to be there when Swift wakes up. Why do I get the feeling I just cashed my last police paycheck? Drive. I pulled my hat down, burying my nose in the lining as I tried to cover the snake rolling off my partner's body. It was going to be a long day. Some ponies have the bus as their time to process the events in their lives. Some ponies just have after dinner and laying in bed. I've got the cab. I tried. I really did. Each time I thought I found a good place to start, it slipped between my hooves and it was left spinning. So many events in the last 3 days, except it hadn't been 3 days, had it? It'd been a month. 28 days since I first saw poor Ruby's corpse in the alleyway. Losing that amount of time, one expects their city to have changed significantly. I put my hooves on the windowsill and stared out at the city. It was great, like many other days in Detrot. And yet I felt a renewed sense of purpose that I'd been missing for years. I still didn't know what the purpose was, but it was gradually growing in my gut. If destiny ever really touches us, mine was smacking me about the ears. The task before me was as straightforward as I've ever been given. Solve the death of 3 ponies, including my own. Why did it have to be so complicated? As was most frequently the case, he was right. Juniper often told me that the best option, given a moment of uncertainty, was just to take the next step. As was most frequently the case, he was right, but I didn't have to like it. Taxi didn't even bother with the front entrance. She just waved to Minox as we passed the Vivi's calm facade. It was a quiet day at the Sex Club, and the Minotaur pointed her around the side of the building. No pony was there to meet us as we pulled up in front of the disguised doorway Taxi put on the parking brake. Now what? She asked, more to herself than me. I didn't answer, but instead stepped out of the back seat, looking both ways. The back of the Vivi backed right up to the bay, and the waters lapped against the concrete shore with calming regularity. I didn't even see him coming. If Taxi's greeting was enthusiastic, Scarlett's was downright unsafe. He crashed into my side like an affectionate bowling ball, smashing me into the car. His legs went around my middle, and he hugged me so tightly my eyes felt fit to pop out of their socket. Detective! He cried into my mane, struggling to breathe. I prized one hoof underneath his knee, and as gently as I could, I pulled him off. Scarlet, get a hold of yourself, stallion. I coughed. You were dead! He sobbed, putting his foreheads on my chest, turning my face back and forth to make sure all my pieces were still there. Yes, and now I'm not. I set him back a few inches and fixed my coat. And if you don't mind, let's skip the entire line of the conversation. I've had that talk with 3 ponies today, and it's three people today, and it's already, and it's old. Let it just be said, I'm fine. Taxion had on one of her smug smiles, specifically the kind she usually reserved for me when I'm embarrassed or in pain, caused largely by what a few social reservations I have left. I rolled my rolled my eyes and patted Scarlet on the cheek, and then turned back to the car. Scarlet, I want you to go get after grown medical stuff. We're gonna need them, I told him. Whatever for? Are you hurt? His already vaguely feminine voice claimed not to see. You just said you were okay. I'm fine. But we found Swift. Oh my. After that, things happened quickly. Scarlet called Afterglow, who practically tore the secret door off its hinges, charging out into the back lot. For a pony that old, she sure can move. She took a few heavy breaths, leaning against the back of the knot trotter, and then pushed herself upright. Where is she? Where's my granddaughter? She barked, covering her worry with anger. I nodded at the car, and she jerked open the back with her horn. Metal shriek and taxi went. But getting between Afterglow and Swift would have been closely akin to getting between a mother bear and its cub, if the mother bear was endowed with the power to fling a pony into the upper atmosphere. It was worth having to straighten the door hinge. "Aw, little bird, what have you got yourself up to now?" she murmured, doing a quick inspection of my partner. Pulling back, she raised her eyes over the car's roof. "Where'd you find her?" "I've been looking for 3 weeks." I shook my head and answered. "She was staying with a friend of ours. Honestly, I don't know what happened. I found her in Skytown. Could you get the medical? Could you get medical already?" "You're damn right, get medical, you idiot. Why'd you bring her here? Why didn't you take her to a damn hospital for her after you called us?" I got between her and her salad, and she went for my throat, I recalled, shoving my coat against my chest protectively. "You want her in a psych ward wearing a straitjacket? Go ahead, take her to the emergency room. Can't think of any place that guards are paid to handle rampaging Pegasus trained in police and combat tactics. I'm just lucky she wasn't strapped when I jostled her lettuce, or I think I'd have a fresh hole." Glow listened to my explanation, and the grimace on her face deepening the already canyon-like lines. With incredible tenderness, she wrapped Swift in this glow of magic, lifting her out of the car and headed for the hidden door. "Give us an hour. We got to look her over. I've got to check in with the department. Keep her sedated. I want to be there when she wakes up," I ordered. The matronly unicorn glanced over her shoulder but nodded. "Don't take too long, you hear?" Glow growled. "I ain't the patient sort. And if I wasn't in a hurry, I'd wring some proper answers out of you. You got 2 hours before I send Zeta to come get you, and I don't think you want to be dragged out of your department roped to an annoyed zebra." "I won't. I promise. Could you have an extension cord set up for me when I get back? I need a charge." I tugged my chest flap open, showing her a blinking light. She flicked her eyes to the plug. "Anything else? Cookies, spot of tea. Some bagels would be great. Oh, and tell the dragon when you see him, I'm ready to play." Okay. Okay, I'm taking off my headphones because I'm doing the comment section, and then I'm gonna prep for the next chapter, and then holy crap, I'm shutting everything down and going to bed. I'm not even gonna upload this until I wake up in the morning because I don't feel good. I'm just trying to finish. Alright, thank you so much, my mystery viewer, for watching. I really, really appreciate, even if you close the tab and mute me, I really do appreciate you so, so much. Thank you. Okay. There we go. Oh my god, that was awesome. Okay. And there's another video I want to watch. Oh shit. Okay, I'm sorry. It led to a chain link that. Okay, so I'm so confused. I'm too tired to chase down this comment. Especially since it's the comment after coming up. Alright. Update. Here. Okay. So, hey, July 5. Story. You're updated. I needed you for a minute. Alright. Alright. Thanks for watching.